Hello, welcome to We Draw More. My name's Phil, and this is the fourth in the series where we look at the top ranked cards on EDHREC. I have a look at why they're highly ranked, I have a look at what makes them good, and then I try and come up with an alternative suggestion that I would maybe play instead. The fourth ranked card on EDHREC as it stands is Krenko Mob Boss. Krenko's a legendary creature Goblin Warrior. They are 2 colourless and 2 red. And they have tap, create X 1/1 red goblin creature tokens where X is the number of goblins you control. So if you control one goblin, let's say you just control Krenko. You tap Krenko, you create a goblin token. Next turn, you tap Krenko, you create 2 goblin tokens. The turn after it would be 4, the turn after that would be 8, the turn after that would be 16. So Krenko provides the goblins, but you need some way of making that pay. And we can start doing that by looking at cards like General Kriat, the Boltbringer, and Hobgoblin Bandit Lord. General Kriat, the Boltbringer, which is 2 colourless and red, they have a 2/2 body, and they're a legendary creature, Goblin Soldier. They have, whenever one or more goblins you control attack, create a 1/1 red goblin creature token that's tapped and attacking. But they also have, whenever another creature you control enters, General Kriat, the Boltbringer, deals 1 damage to each opponent. So as you can see, if you're tapping Krenko and you're creating lots of goblins, that's going to do lots of damage to your opponents. Hobgoblin Bandit Lord isn't too dissimilar. They are 1 and 2 red. They are a creature goblin rogue. They have other goblins you control get +1/+1, so they boost your tokens. They also have red tap, Hobgoblin Bandit Lord that deals damage equal to the number of goblins that entered the battlefield under your control this turn to any target. So not only will they damage your opponents, they can also pick off your opponent's creatures as well. But you can use goblins for so many more things than just doing damage to your opponents either by attacking or indirect damage as we've just seen. Goblin Trashmaster, for example, 2 colourless, 2 red, Goblin Warrior, as other goblins you control get +1/+1, so they are a lord. But they also have Sacrifice a Goblin, Destroy Target Artifact. Now, most people in EDH still play with Mana Rocks, and so you're always going to have a target in that regard, but there are a lot of decks that focus on artifacts for many other reasons. So being able to just sacrifice a random goblin just to be able to destroy whichever artifact you find most annoying on the battlefield is very useful. We also have Skirk Prospector. Skirk Prospector is 1 red. They are just a standard goblin. They have Sacrifice a Goblin, add red. If we are producing a lot of goblins, let's say we have 10 in play, we tap Krenko and create 10 more, we could sacrifice 10 of those, get 10 red mana, and we can cast a whole load of cards out of our hand. Something like Skirk is going to give us the mana and the gas we need to really push home our plan to win the game. We also have cards like Dark Dweller Oracle. Dark Dweller Oracle is a Goblin Shaman. They are 1 colourless and red, and they have 1 sacrifice creature, exile the top card of your library. You may play that card this turn. This is the kind of short-term draw that red excels at. So if it's a land, you can play it this turn, but if it's not, and you've got the mana open, and you can always sacrifice your goblins to get you the red mana to play the card, you can then just play it. We have cards like Outpost Siege. Outpost Siege is the first non-goblin card I picked. They are 3 colourless and red for an enchantment, and has Outpost Siege, enters the battlefield, choose Khans or Dragons. Cards just says at the beginning of your upkeep, exile the top card of your library. Until end turn, you may play that card. That's not dissimilar to Dark Dweller Oracle. But Dragons says whenever a creature you control leaves the battlefield, Outpost Siege deals 1 damage to any target. This is useful in 2 ways. One, it gives us that pseudo draw ability, but 2, also, if we're sacrificing our goblins to do various bits like Dark Dweller Oracle or to produce mana, then we can choose dragons, and whenever a creature you control leaves the battlefield, we're killing our goblin tokens, they're leaving the battlefield, we're dealing damage to any target. So it's doubling down on the damage. We're getting damage for goblins coming into play, and we're getting damage for goblins leaving play. Similar to Outpost Siege, Bogart Shenanigans, which is also 2 colours in 1 red, is a tribal enchantment goblin, and has whenever another goblin you control is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, you may have Bogart Shenanigans deal 1 damage to target player. Not quite any target, but it's still going to damage your opponents, and your opponents are not going to be happy about it, but it's another way to kill them. Treasure Nabber is 2 colours and a red, creature goblin rogue. Whenever an opponent taps an artifact for mana, gain control of that artifact until the end of your next turn. When I was looking for cards that I would include in Krenko Mob Boss, and I was looking for interesting effects that goblins can be used for, and I found Treasure Nabber, I was like, oh, that's so good. You just basically steal your opponent's mana rocks. That's the simplest form of it. There's various other uses for it. They could be tapping all sorts of things. But at the very least, they tap their Soul Ring. You get to steal it off them. It's only for a turn, but it's annoying to them and it's fun for you. And then we look at Krenko. Krenko actually comes in multiple flavors, and Krenko Baron of Tin Street is 2 colorless and red, and is a legendary creature goblin, has haste and has tap. Sacrifice an artifact. Put a +1/+1 counter on each goblin you control. Can you see where I'm going here? You're still there, Sol Ring. You tap it, you use it, and then you sacrifice it to Krenko, and you put +1/+1 counters on all the goblins you're producing with Krenko Mob Boss. Krenko Baron of Tin Street also happens to have, whenever an artifact is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, you may pay red. If you do, create a 1/1 red goblin creature token. It gains haste until end of turn. There is a sequence of play there whereby you steal an artifact, you sacrifice it, you put +1/+1 counters on all your goblins, and you also get to put another one into play. Krenko also comes with a third iteration, and that's Krenko Tin Street Kingpin, also 2 colorless and red, and they are a legendary creature goblin. And they have, whenever Krenko Tin Street Kingpin attacks, put a +1/+1 counter on it, then create a number of 1/1 red goblin creature tokens equal to Krenko's power. If you are intent on playing mono red goblins in Magic the Gathering, Krenko Mob Boss is by far and away the best commander to play. If you don't want to play Krenko Mob Boss, the second best card to play is Krenko Tin Street Kingpin. And you're likely, no matter which 2 versions of Krenko you use, to put the other 2 in the 99. If I was forced to pick a card to replace Krenko Mob Boss and I was just focusing on a Goblin Tribal Mono Red deck, Krenko Tin Street Kingpin for me is the only alternative, which is why Krenko Mob Boss is number 4 in the EDH top ranked commander list, because it's just so good at what it does, it's not really replaceable. If we start to move outside of goblins and we stick with mono red, then there start to be other options. Rionya Fire Dancer, for example, is 3 colorless, 2 red. They're a legendary creature, human wizard, and they have at the beginning of combat on your turn, create X tokens that are copies of another target creature you control, where X is 1 plus the number of instant and sorcery spells you've cast this turn. They gain haste. Exile them at the beginning of the next end step. Rionya also has a 3/4 body. Rionya is a very different playstyle. What they're trying to do is find big creatures with enter the battlefield effects, copy them so that you get multiple enter the battlefield effects. The alternative is that you're getting big attack effects because they do have haste, so you'll attack with them, and if you don't attack with them, you're going to lose them at the end step anyway. The other option, of course, is to create these tokens and then sack them to do something else with them. Either way, the playstyle of Rionya is very different to the playstyle of Krenko. Another alternative token-generating mono-red creature is Delina Wild Mage. They're 3 colorless and red. They're a legendary creature elf shaman with a 3/2 body, and they have, whenever Delina Wild Mage attacks, choose target creature you control, then roll a d20. If you get a 1 to 14, you get to create a tapped and attacking token that's a copy of a creature, except it's not legendary and it has exile this creature at the end of combat. And if you roll between 15 and 20, you get to create one of those tokens and roll again. So you get a chance to create another one. And you've got about a 1 in 4 chance to keep rolling. Delina is different to Rionya, as Delina wants you to copy a target creature, but that could be one of your opponent's creatures, not just your own creatures. The creature you create is tapped and attacking. So you need to be picking the best creature that's going to have the best attack opportunities and attack the opponent that's the weakest when you're doing this. You're relying on your opponents having decent creatures, or even yourself having decent creatures worth copying. If we start to steer outside of playing mono red, but we keep with red, but we're still looking at token generation, another option might be Anim Pakal, 1000th Moon. They are 1 colorless and Boros, which is red-white. They're a legendary creature, human soldier, and they have quite a lot of text. It reads, whenever you attack with 1 or more non-gnome creatures, put a +1/+1 counter on Anim Pakal. Then create X 1/1 colorless gnome artifact creature tokens that are tapped and attacking, where X is the number of +1/+1 counters on Anim Pakal. So Anim Pakal can produce a lot of gnome artifact creature tokens. It's a slightly different playstyle to Krenko, but similar in as much as you are generating a lot of gnome artifact creature tokens as opposed to goblins. Steering slightly further afield, we have Jan Jansen Chaos Crafter, who is red, white, black, and is a legendary creature gnome artificer, and they have haste. Sacrifice an artifact creature, create 2 treasure tokens, and they have tap. Sacrifice a non-creature artifact, create 2 1/1 colorless construct artifact creature tokens. They are in white. White does have the ability to blink creatures, so there is a possibility here where you can be blinking Jansen. They'll come back into play because they have haste. You're able to tap them again and alternate between their two activated abilities. And I started to think to myself, well, what other token generators are there out there that I'm interested in that have got a similar casting cost to Krenko Mob Boss and also produce tokens? So I went on to Scryfall. I set it to be a maximum mana value of 4. I set it to include red in my commander colours, and it had to be a legendary creature, of course. And then I hit go and had a look down the list. And one card that caught my eye, mainly because I actually do own it, is Tanner the Bloodsower. They are 2 colours in Gruul, which is red-green. They're a legendary creature elf druid. They have a 2/2 body. They have trample, and they have, whenever Tanner the Bloodsower deals combat damage to a player, create that many 1/1 green sapling creature tokens. They also have partner, and in brackets it reads, you can have 2 commanders if both have partner. So we get to pick Tanner, but we do get to choose a partner. So I had a good look around the partner creatures available, and the first creature I looked at was Arden Intrepid Archaeologist. They are 2 colourless and white. They're a legendary creature core scout. They have a 2/2 body, and they have, at the beginning of combat on your turn, you may attach any number of auras and equipment you control to target permanent or player. They also have partner, which they need if we're going to play them together. But after some thought, I realised that what Arden Intrepid Archaeologist would turn the deck into is a Voltron deck using equipment. Something like Conqueror's Flail, which is 2 colourless artifact equipment. Equipped creature gets +1/+1 for each colour among permanents you control, so it would be a maximum of +3/+3. And it has, as long as Conqueror's Flail is attached to a creature, your opponents can't cast spells during your turn. Equip 2. The idea being is you would equip lots of equipments and enchantment auras to Tanner the Bloodsower, attack with her, she has trample, and you would effectively win using commander damage. That completely negates the idea of generate saplings during an attack. They would just become fodder for drawing cards, that sort of thing. They wouldn't be the main focus of the deck. And so I dismissed that version of the deck. The next card I looked at is Bruise Tau, Boorish Herder. They are 2 colourless and Boros, which is red-white. They are a legendary creature human ally. And they have, whenever Bruise Tau, Boorish Herder enters the battlefield or attacks, target creature you control gains double strike and lifelink until the end of turn. My immediate thought of this is that's fantastic. We get Tanner double strike and lifelink. I can gain some life, but the double strike means I produce twice as many sapling creature tokens. And I can use that double strike with cards like Oran Frostfang, which is 3 colourless and 2 white. And they're a snow creature snake, and they have attacking creatures you control have death touch, makes me much less likely to be blocked. But they also have, whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, draw a card. If we have double strike and we hit the player twice, we draw 2 cards. That is also true for any other creature I'm attacking with, and that could be all my little 1/1 saplings, which have death touch, which nobody wants to block, because if they do block them, they'll lose their creatures. The more I thought about this deck, the more I realised that this too would be an aggressive deck. It wouldn't be quite the same. It would revolve around attacking with lots of creatures, and it's quite a viable deck. But I've got to be attacking with both Bruise Tower, I've got to be attacking with Tanner, and I'm probably likely to be attacking with everything else. And so it is very Gruul in its nature, i.e. it's constantly attacking. It's a very aggressive deck, but it wasn't quite what I was looking for to replace Krenko. The next card I picked up on was Keleth Sunmane Familiar. They are 1 colourless and white, which I liked because they're cheaper than Tanner. They're a legendary creature horse, and they have, whenever a commander you control attacks, put a +1/+1 counter on it, and they have a 1/1 body. The card is very much less about Keleth themselves. They're a 1/1 horse. They're not anything special. It's more about the fact that they get me to put +1/+1 counters on Tanner. I attack with Tanner. I add a +1/+1 counter to her. She's then a 3/3 with trample. Hopefully I get some combat damage through. I then get to put saplings into play, and we can start the engine for my deck going. One of the first cards I picked up on that you could put in this deck was Master Chef. They are 2 colourless and green. They're a legendary enchantment background. Unfortunately, in this case, they would have to be in the 99. They say, commander creatures you own have this creature enters the battlefield with an additional +1/+1 counter on it. So when Tanner enters, they would already be a 3/3. And they also have other creatures you control enter the battlefield with an additional +1/+1 counter on them. So any saplings that you then generate afterwards actually get generated as 2/2s. If we're attacking and we're generating saplings, and the saplings are coming into play, a really good payoff for this is Ivy Lane Denizen, who is 3 colourless and green and is a creature elf warrior, and they say whenever another green creature enters the battlefield under your control, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature. and they have a 2/3 body. So as you're putting saplings into play, you can be then pumping Tanner, so the next time you attack with them, you're going to be able to put more saplings into play, and you're going to be able to do more with those saplings. Because we are attacking a lot with Tanner, it is worthwhile considering playing cards like Bastion Protector, who is 2 colourless and white. They're a creature human soldier, and they have commander creatures you control get a +2/+2 and have indestructible. A, they lose Tanner, which produces more saplings. B, they make her indestructible, which means you're less likely to lose her if you have a poor exchange in combat. When we're producing these saplings, we need to be able to do things with them. In the same way as if we're playing Krenko, we have things we can do with our goblins. And one of the cards I thought of first, which I've used before, particularly in my Gave deck back in the day, is Utopia Mycon. Utopia Mycon is a 1 green 0/2 fungus, and they have at the beginning of your upkeep put a spore counter on Utopia Mycon, remove 3 spore counters from Utopia Mycon, create a 1/1 green sapling creature token. They do generate saplings, but they do so very slowly. But they also have sacrifice a sapling, add 1 mana of any colour. So you can use those saplings to generate your mana to cast more spells. There are other ways that we can use saplings to generate mana. One of the first that comes to mind is EDHREC, Friend of the Forest. EDHREC is 2 colourless and green. They're a legendary creature, human, elf, druid, and they have tokens you control have tap, add green. Quite simple, really. And choose a background. Unfortunately, that doesn't work because they're not your commander. They also have a 2/3 body. So the saplings we're producing will be able to tap for green mana or sacrifice from any other colour if we need it. We can also use cards like Psychotrope Thalid, which is 2 colourless and green and has a lot of the same text on it that Utopia Mycon has, but it also has 1 sacrifice a sapling, draw a card. This means that we can tap a sapling, generate green mana from it, sacrifice it, pay for the cost using the mana we generated from tapping it, and then we can use that to draw a card. We also have cards like Fungal Plots, is 1 and green, and it's an enchantment, and it has 1 green, exile a creature card from your graveyard, create a 1/1 green sapling creature token. I don't know if that's particularly useful, but if someone else is trying to do something with that creature card in your graveyard, you can always exile it. But it also has sacrifice 2 saplings, you gain 2 life and draw a card. So depending on the situation, if you've got enough saplings in play and you don't mind sacrificing 2 of them to draw a card, Fungal Plots lets you do so. Whilst I was hunting around and I found Fungal Plots, I also found Brightcap Badger. Brightcap Badger does a lot of work. It's an adventure, and the adventure is called Fungus Frolic and is 2 colourless and green, and that creates 2/1 green sapling creature tokens for us. And then once we've cast the adventure, we can then cast Brightcap Badger from exile. They are 3 colours in green. They're a 3/4 Badger Druid, and they have each fungus and sapling you control has tap, add green. They also have at the beginning of your end step, create a 1/1 green sapling creature token. Not the fastest way to generate saplings, but far faster than the remove 3 spore counters method that we've seen previously. And if we're looking at generating lots of saplings, and also the fact that we may lose our commander because people are going to want to be trying to target her, one of the cards we can use, and one of my favourite magic cards of all time, is Mycoloth. They are 3 colourless and 2 green. They're a creature fungus with a 4/4 body, and they have Devour 2. As this enters the battlefield, you may sacrifice any number of creatures. This creature enters the battlefield with twice that many +1/+1 counters on it. Let's say we've got 4 saplings in play. We sacrifice all 4 of those to Mycoloth. Mycoloth comes into play with 8 +1/+1 counters, so it comes in as a 12/12, and then it has at the beginning of your upkeep create a 1/1 green sapling creature token for each +1/+1 counter on Mycoloth. So if we've got 8 +1/+1 counters on Mycoloth, we're generating 8 saplings. You can see how that could get out of hand pretty quickly. Another fun way to generate saplings is Shrufus Sprout Sire. They are 2 colourless and green. They are a legendary creature sapling, and they have trample. Whenever a sapling you control deals combat damage to a player, create that many 1/1 green sapling creature tokens. Another way for us to generate a lot of saplings in one hit, and is probably closer to an end game strategy, is Sapling Symbiosis. Sapling Symbiosis is 3 colourless and green and is a sorcery, and has you may cast Sapling Symbiosis as though it had flash if you pay 2 more to cast it. And they have create a 1/1 green sapling creature token for each creature you control. So if you already control 10 saplings, Sapling Symbiosis is going to put 10 more of them into play. If you want to pay the extra cost, they can do so at instant speed. So you can do this in response to being attacked, or a good time to do it would be at the end of your opponent's turn, who is immediately before your turn. So you put them into play. In your turn, their summoning sickness is gone. You can then attack with them and hopefully overrun your opponents. but they're 1-1s or maybe 2-2s so far at best. So what we need is a way of pumping them up to make them bigger if we are going to take that overrun style method of winning the game. And we do have options to boost up our saplings. We can look at Tender Shoot Dryad. They are 4 colourless and green. They're a Dryad. They have Ascend. If you control 10 or more permanents, you get the city's blessing for the rest of the game. Hopefully we've got plenty of saplings in play to count for that, but we've also got lands and other creatures. And it has, at the beginning of each upkeep, create a 1/1 green sapling creature token. And they also have saplings you control get +2/+2 as long as you have the city's blessing. We can also use a card like Nemata Grove Guardian. They are 4 colourless and 2 green. They are a legendary creature tree folk with a 4/5 body. And they have 2 colourless green, create a 1/1 green sapling creature token. They also have Sacrifice a Sapling. Sapling creatures get +1/+1 until end of turn. There's some maths to be done there. If you sacrificed 3 saplings, for example, all of your saplings will get +1/+1. If you had 7 more saplings in play, they would be at the very minimum 4 4s. You would be doing a lot more damage in that situation. Before I sign off, there are a couple of cards I thought deserved an honorary mention. The first of which is Ulash the Hate Seed. Ulash the Hate Seed is 2 colours and Gruul, that's red-green. They are a legendary creature, Helion Hydra, and they have Ulash the Hate Seed enters the battlefield with a +1/+1 counter it for each other red creature you control, and a +1/+1 counter on it for each other green creature you control. Saplings are green. They also have 1. Remove a +1/+1 counter from Ulash and choose 1. Ulash deals 1 damage to target creature, so you can use it to pick off other creatures, or create a 1/1 green sapling creature token. So it takes some mana to do it, but you can effectively play Ulash the Hate Seed and then remove a lot of their +1/+1 counters to put a lot more saplings back into play. If you've got white and you're able to bounce Ulash and play it again, that's a repeatable effect. The other legendary creature I really wanted to mention as part of this video is Rith the Awakener. They are a legendary creature dragon. They cost 3 colourless and Naya, which is red, green and white, and they have flying. Whenever Rith the Awakener deals combat damage to a player, you may pay 2 colourless and green. If you do, choose a colour, likely green, maybe something else depending on what your opponents are playing, then create a 1/1 green sapling creature token for each permanent of that colour. And they have a 6/6 body. So not only are they a fairly big flying creature, which is quite useful in and of itself in a deck that doesn't really have flyers, they also have a way of putting a lot of saplings into play themselves, which will boost your deck even further. And that's the end of my little take on Krenko Mob Boss. I know I took it off in quite a side tangent there and went into a sapling creature deck, but I think the whole idea of Krenko is that you're going to use all those goblins to do lots of different things, and goblins are doing what goblins do best. And so I could have gone down the route and done squirrels doing what squirrels do best, or even rabbits more recently. But I thought I would hark back to something which is quite close to my heart, which is saplings, and look at the way you can do saplings doing what they do best. So you can I would be interested in hearing what you might use instead of Krenko Mob Boss, so why don't you let me know in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoyed this, and join me next time when we look at the 5th ranked card on EDHREC.